Emily Carter had always believed that honesty was something people recognized when they saw it. After nearly 4 years working inside the Whitmore Grand Hotel in New York City, I thought my dedication, my patience, and the way I treated people every day would speak louder than any rumor ever could. I knew every hallway in that hotel, every quiet corner where guests preferred privacy, every detail that made an event feel effortless. I knew which employees needed encouragement after difficult shifts, which guests appreciated kindness, and how much work happened behind the scenes to create the illusion that everything simply happened perfectly. For a long time, I believed that was enough. I was wrong. The truth was that some people never looked past what they expected to see. Before they knew my name, they had already decided what my appearance meant. Because of my size, people often underestimated me before I ever had the chance to show them who I really was. They assumed I was less capable, less confident, and less deserving of respect. I learned to live with those assumptions without allowing them to define me. I focused on being reliable, professional, and kind because I knew the value of my work even when others did not. That was why the accusation hurt in a way I never expected. It happened during what should have been another successful evening at the hotel. The main ballroom was filled with important guests attending a private business celebration, and every detail had been carefully arranged. The polished floors reflected the lights above. Conversations moved smoothly between powerful people, and the entire event appeared flawless from the outside. I was doing what I had always done, making sure everything worked without drawing attention to myself. Then something disappeared. A valuable family possession went missing from a locked office near the event area, and within minutes, the atmosphere inside the hotel changed. The laughter faded into whispers. Guests who had been enjoying the evening suddenly began searching for someone responsible. Questions spread quickly, but they were not the kind of questions meant to discover the truth. They were questions looking for the easiest person to blame. And somehow, that person became me. I still remember standing there while people looked at me differently. Not with curiosity, not with concern, with suspicion. The years I had spent proving my loyalty to the Whitmore family seemed meaningless in a single moment. The kindness I had shown, the extra hours I had worked, and the trust one had carefully built were forgotten because an accusation was easier to accept than the possibility that they might be wrong. "Emily, you were responsible for that area tonight, correct?" one of the managers asked. I answered honestly, "Yes, but I was not alone. Several employees were working nearby. Nobody seemed interested in that detail. They focused on the explanation that required the least effort. The person who had access. The person who seemed easiest to question. The person they believed nobody important would defend." I looked around the room and saw something that hurt more than the accusation itself. People who had smiled at me for years suddenly avoided my eyes. Some looked uncomfortable, but discomfort was not the same as standing up for someone. Others simply watched, waiting to see how the situation would end. I wanted to explain everything. I wanted to tell them every reason they were wrong. I wanted to prove that the person they were judging was not the person they imagined. But deep inside, I understood something important. Truth does not become stronger when you panic. Sometimes the only way to protect it is to remain calm until someone is willing to actually look. So I waited. Then the doors opened. The room shifted as Alexander Russo walked in. Everyone knew who he was. His name carried influence throughout New York, not because he demanded attention, but because his decisions had consequences far beyond a single room. He was the kind of man people described carefully, a businessman who had built his reputation through discipline, intelligence, and the ability to see what others missed. I expected the same judgment from him that I had received all night. I expected another person to look at me and see only an accusation. But Alexander did something different. Before saying anything, he studied the room. He looked at the people gathered around the evidence, the timeline of events, and the details everyone else had ignored. Then his eyes moved toward me. For the first time that evening, I felt like someone was trying to understand what happened instead of simply deciding who was responsible. "Something is wrong," he said. Nobody moved. The manager quickly explained that the evidence was clear, but Alexander calmly picked up the report and looked through it himself. "No," he said quietly. "It is convenient." Those two words changed the way everyone viewed the situation. Alexander Russo noticed something nobody else had considered. The accusation against me was not just suspicious because it was unfair. It was suspicious because everything about it appeared too perfectly arranged. and I did not know it then. But that was the first moment someone was finally looking at me as a person instead of a suspect. I also had no idea that Alexander Russo had just stepped into a situation that would reveal a truth neither of us was prepared to face. "Something is wrong," he said. Nobody moved. The manager looked surprised. "Mr. Russo, the evidence is clear." Alexander calmly picked up the report. "No, it is convenient." That single word changed the room. He noticed what everyone else ignored. The accusation against me was too perfect. The evidence appeared too quickly. The story had been prepared before anyone searched for the truth. I looked at him, confused. Why would someone like Alexander Russo care about what happened to me? "Why are you questioning this?" I asked. He looked at me for a moment. "Because I have seen people create distractions before. And this does not look like a mistake." For the first time that night, someone was not looking at me as a suspect. He was looking at me as a person. But I did not know then that Alexander was not only searching for the truth about what happened at the hotel. He was about to uncover a betrayal connected to his own world. And somehow, the woman everyone blamed would become the person who revealed everything. I thought the hardest part would be proving I was innocent. I was wrong. The hardest part was accepting that someone had planned everything so carefully that the truth looked impossible to find. After Alexander Russo questioned the evidence against me, the entire room changed. The people who had been certain about my guilt suddenly became quiet. But I knew something important. One person believing me did not erase the damage that had already been done. My reputation had been questioned. My work had been affected. And the way people looked at me had changed. The next morning, I returned to the hotel because I refused to let one accusation take away everything I had built. I walked through the same lobby where people had whispered about me the night before. I heard the same conversation stop when I entered. But this time, I kept walking. I had learned something about dignity. You do not prove your value by convincing everyone. You prove it by refusing to become smaller because others misunderstand you. When I arrived at my office, I found Alexander waiting outside. I was surprised. A man like him did not usually wait for anyone. "You have questions," he said. I looked at him. "I have many." A small smile appeared on his face. "Good. Questions usually lead to the truth." I was not sure whether I trusted him yet. Alexander Russo was powerful. People respected him. Some people feared disappointing him. But I had spent my entire life learning not to be impressed by someone's position. "Why are you involved?" I asked. "Because the situation does not make sense." "That is not a reason to help me." He looked at me carefully. "You are right." For a moment, I thought he would give me some complicated answer. Instead, he said, "I do not like seeing innocent people blamed because someone else wants an easy solution." That answer surprised me. It sounded personal. "You think I am innocent?" I asked. "I think the facts are incomplete." That was different. Alexander was not promising something he could not prove. He was not pretending to know everything. He was simply willing to look closer. We walked through the hotel together, reviewing every detail from the night before. The office where the item disappeared. The employees who had access. The timeline of events. Alexander noticed things I had overlooked because I was too focused on defending myself. "Who discovered the missing item?" he asked. I told him the name. He wrote it down. "Who reported your access to that area?" I answered again. He paused. "Interesting." I looked at him. "What?" "The same person who pointed attention toward you was also the person who controlled the information everyone received." A cold feeling passed through me. Not fear. Realization. Someone had guided the story before anyone knew the truth. "So you think someone wanted me blamed?" I said. Alexander nodded. "Yes." "Why me?" He looked at me for a moment before answering. "Because you were the easiest person to doubt." The words hurt because they were true, but hearing them from him felt different. He was not insulting me. He was explaining the strategy of whoever created this situation. "People make assumptions," he continued. "They see what they expect to see. Someone with power can become suspicious. Someone without it can become invisible." I looked at him. "And you think I am invisible?" "No," he said. "I think someone wanted everyone else to believe you were." That sentence stayed with me. Because for years, I had felt people look past me. I never imagined someone would use that against me. Later that afternoon, Alexander discovered another detail. A security record had been changed shortly before the accusation. Not deleted. Not completely hidden. Just altered enough to create doubt. Someone wanted the truth buried, but they were not careful enough, he said. I looked at the information on his screen. Who would do this? Alexander became quiet. That was the first time I saw uncertainty in his expression. Someone with access. Inside the hotel? I asked. He nodded. Or someone connected to the people who own it. I realized then that this was bigger than I expected. I had thought someone wanted to ruin my job. But Alexander was looking at something much deeper. Before leaving, he handed me a folder. Keep this. I looked at him. Why? Because if someone is trying to control the story, you need to know the facts before they decide what you should believe. I held the folder tightly. For the first time since the accusation began, I felt like I had something stronger than fear. I had information. As Alexander walked away, I watched him disappear into the crowd of the hotel lobby. I still did not understand why a man like him cared about my situation. But I knew one thing. He was not looking for someone to blame. He was looking for someone who had betrayed the truth. And I was beginning to realize that the person who framed me was not trying to hurt only me. They were hiding something much bigger. I thought finding the person who framed me would bring me peace. I was wrong. The more answers we found, the more I realized this was never just about one missing item. It was about a secret that someone had spent years protecting. After Alexander gave me the folder containing the evidence, I stayed awake most of the night reviewing everything. Names, times, records, small details that seemed meaningless before suddenly became important. I had spent years working at the Whitmore Grand Hotel believing I understood the people around me. Now I was questioning everything. Who had been honest with me? Who had only been pretending? The next morning, Alexander asked me to meet him at a private office away from the hotel. I expected more questions. Instead, he placed several documents on the table. These records connect the hotel situation to something older, he said. I looked at him carefully. Older? He nodded. Before this incident happened, someone was already looking into your background. My expression changed. My background? What? Alexander did not answer immediately. He studied the documents first. That was something I noticed about him. He did not react emotionally before understanding the facts. Emily, what do you know about your father? The question caught me off guard. My father had passed away years ago, and I rarely talked about him. Not because I did not love him, because remembering him always reminded me of how much had changed. He was a good man, I said. He worked hard. He believed people should be treated fairly. Alexander looked at me. What did he do before he passed away? I hesitated. He worked in business. What kind of business? I looked down. He worked with important people. That was the truth, but not the entire truth. My father had always kept certain parts of his life private. I knew he had connections, but I never understood how important those connections were. Alexander opened another document. Inside was an old company record. My father's name appeared on the page. I stared at it. How did you find this? I asked. Because your name appeared in places it should not have. I looked at him. What does that mean? It means someone did not choose you randomly. Those words changed everything. Until that moment, I thought I was just an easy target. Someone blamed because people underestimated me. But Alexander was suggesting something else. Someone knew who I was. Someone knew my connection to my father. Are you saying this was planned? I asked. Alexander nodded slowly. I think someone wanted you connected to this situation because of your family. I felt confused. But my family has nothing to do with this. Are you sure? His question stayed with me. Because deep down, I knew there were things my father never explained. Memories came back. Phone calls he ended quickly when I entered the room. Conversations he stopped when he noticed I was listening. The feeling that he was protecting me from something I did not understand. My father always told me to stay away from certain people, I admitted. Alexander became more interested. Did he ever say why? I shook my head. No. He only said that some truths were dangerous when discovered by the wrong people. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The words sounded different now. At the time, I thought my father was being overly cautious. Now I wondered if he was preparing me for something. Later that day, Alexander helped me review old records connected to my father. We discovered that he had once worked with a company connected to Alexander's family. That connection surprised both of us. Your father helped my family years ago, Alexander said quietly. I looked at him. You knew him? Not personally, but my father respected him. I looked at the documents again. Suddenly, my situation felt much bigger than a hotel accusation. Someone had tried to damage my reputation, but the reason behind it reached much further into the past. Why would someone wait so many years? I asked. Alexander looked thoughtful. Because sometimes secrets are more valuable when people believe they are forgotten. That answer gave me chills. Not because I was afraid, because I finally understood. The accusation against me was not the beginning of the story. It was a continuation of something that started long before I ever worked at that hotel. Before I left, Alexander handed me another file. "I found one more thing," he said. I opened it carefully. Inside was a photograph of my father standing beside several people I did not recognize. But one face caught my attention. A person who looked familiar. Someone I had seen at the hotel many times. I looked at Alexander. "Who was that?" He was silent for a moment before answering. "Someone who has been close to this situation from the beginning." I stared at the photograph again. The person who framed me was not just someone looking for an easy target. They were connected to my past. And for the first time, I realized the truth was not only about clearing my name. It was about discovering why someone wanted my father's story to remain hidden. I thought the person who betrayed my family would be someone I had never met. I was wrong. The hardest truth to accept was realizing that sometimes the people closest to a story are the ones who know how to hide it the longest. After seeing the photograph Alexander showed me, I could not stop thinking about one face. Someone I recognized. Someone who had walked through the halls of the Whitmore Grand Hotel many times. Someone I had greeted with a smile, without ever knowing they were connected to the mystery surrounding my family. His name was Daniel Brooks. He was a senior executive at the hotel and someone everyone respected. He was professional, polite, and always appeared calm under pressure. The kind of person nobody questioned. That was what made everything feel impossible. "Are you sure?" I asked Alexander. He looked at the photograph again. "I am sure he has a connection. I am not sure what that connection means yet." That answer mattered. Alexander never rushed to judgment. He did not accuse people without understanding the full story. It was one of the reasons I started trusting him. He was powerful, but he was careful with that power. We returned to the hotel and began reviewing the details from another perspective. This time, we were not looking at me as a suspect. We were looking at the person who benefited from making me one, who knew about the missing item before everyone else. Alexander asked. I thought carefully. Only a few people. Who had access to the information? Management. Security. The event organizers. He nodded. And Daniel? I paused. Yes, he would have known. Alexander wrote his name down. Interesting. I looked at him. You keep saying that word when something worries you. A small smile appeared on his face. You notice a lot. I have to. People often assume I do not. For a moment, he looked at me differently. Not with sympathy, with respect. That may be your greatest advantage, he said. People underestimate what they do not understand. His words reminded me of my entire life. Being underestimated had always felt like a weakness. But maybe I had learned things other people never needed to learn. I learned to observe. I learned to listen. I learned to notice small changes in people's behavior. And those small details started revealing something important. Daniel had changed after the accusation. Before that night, he had always treated me kindly. Afterward, he avoided conversations. He asked questions carefully, almost like he was worried I might remember something. There is something strange, I told Alexander. What? Daniel knew my schedule that night. He knew which areas I worked in. But he also knew personal details about my father. Alexander looked at me. How do you know that? I explained. A few weeks earlier, Daniel had mentioned my father's old company during a casual conversation. At the time, I thought it was a coincidence. Now it felt different. He knew about my family before I told him. Alexander became quiet. That is important. We spent the rest of the day looking through old records. Then we found something unexpected. A business connection between Daniel's family and the company my father worked with years ago. It was not proof of betrayal, but it was a connection. And connections were where hidden stories usually began. That evening, Alexander and I sat in his office reviewing everything we had discovered. The city lights reflected across the windows. For the first time, I saw the weight he carried. Everyone believed Alexander Russo had all the answers. But he was searching too. You knew my father mattered before you met me, I said. He looked at me. Yes. Why did you never tell me? He was silent for a moment. Because I did not know how much you knew. And because I wanted to know if you were searching for answers or revenge. That surprised me. And what did you discover? I asked. He looked at me calmly. That you were nothing like what people assumed. I looked away. I did not know how to respond. Most people saw my appearance before they saw my character. Alexander had seen my character before anything else. Before I left, we found one final detail. A private meeting had been scheduled between Daniel and someone connected to the old company records. The meeting happened shortly before the accusation against me. Who was he meeting? I asked. Alexander looked at the document. His expression changed slightly. Someone from my organization. My heart sank. The situation had become bigger than I imagined. This was no longer only about my family. It was connected to Alexander's world too. As I walked out of his office that night, I realized something. The person who framed me had carefully chosen me because they believed nobody would stand beside me. They were wrong. Because the man everyone feared was the one person willing to search for the truth. And together, we were getting closer to the secret someone had spent years trying to protect. I thought discovering the person connected to my family's past would finally make everything clear. I was wrong. The closer we got to the truth, the more complicated the story became. Every answer seemed to reveal another question, and every person we trusted seemed to have a hidden chapter we never knew about. After Alexander discovered the meeting between Daniel Brooks and someone from his organization, I knew this was no longer only about me. My name had been used as a distraction. Someone wanted everyone looking in the wrong direction. The next morning, Alexander asked me to meet him before I started my shift at the hotel. When I arrived, I noticed he looked different. Usually, he appeared completely in control. But that day, there was something heavier behind his expression. I found more information, he said. I sat down across from him. About Daniel? He nodded. And about someone connected to my family. I waited. Alexander placed a document on the table. It was an old business record from years ago. My father's company was listed beside another name. Russo Holdings. I looked at him. Your family worked with my father? Alexander nodded. Yes, but there was something I did not know until now. I studied his face. What? He looked at the document. Your father was not just a business partner. He was someone my father trusted. That surprised me. I had always thought my father's connections were distant and professional. I never realized he had people who respected him so deeply. Then why did nobody tell me? I asked. Alexander became quiet. Because after your father disappeared, many people believed it was better to leave the past alone. I looked down. They decided for me. Yes, he said. And that was the mistake. Those words stayed with me. Because that was exactly what had happened my entire life. People decided what I could handle. They decided what I deserved to know. They decided who they thought I was before understanding me. Alexander and I continued reviewing the documents. We discovered that years ago, my father had been investigating financial problems connected to several companies. He believed someone inside the organization was hiding important information. He was looking for the same person we are looking for now, Alexander said. I felt a strange connection between the past and the present. The person who framed me knew about this. Alexander nodded. Most likely. Why would they wait so long? He looked thoughtful. Because they believed the information would stay buried. I looked at the papers. But it did not. No, he said. Because your father prepared for the possibility that someone would need to find it one day. That sentence affected me. My father had always been careful. He had always believed preparation mattered. But I never imagined he had been preparing for something like this. Later that afternoon, we discovered another name connected to the old records. Daniel Brooks was not the only person involved. There was someone else who had access to information about my father. Someone closer to Alexander than either of us expected. Who is it? I asked. Alexander did not answer immediately. He looked at the file again. Someone I trusted. I understood then why this was difficult for him. Finding a stranger involved in a betrayal was one thing. Discovering someone close to you might be responsible was something else entirely. You do not have to handle this alone, I said. Alexander looked at me with surprise. You are offering me support? I smiled slightly. You are doing the same for me. For a moment, neither of us spoke. It was strange. A man like Alexander was surrounded by people every day, but very few people probably offered him simple understanding. Most people see my position before they see me, he said quietly. I looked at him. I understand that feeling. That was the first moment I realized how similar we were. Different lives, different circumstances, but the same experience of being judged before being known. Before leaving, Alexander showed me one more piece of evidence. It was a message from my father that had been hidden inside an old company file. The message was short. Protect the truth, but never lose your humanity. I read it twice. Those words sounded exactly like him. My father was not asking someone to seek revenge. He was asking someone to choose what was right. That evening, Alexander and I returned to the hotel. We watched people walk through the lobby, unaware of the story unfolding around them. A place that once represented the moment my life changed now represented something else. A chance to finally understand what happened. But then Alexander received a message. He read it silently before looking at me. "What is it?" I asked. His expression became serious. "The person we have been searching for knows we are looking." My heart changed. The secret was no longer hidden quietly in old documents. Someone knew we were close. And that meant the truth my father protected for years was finally ready to be revealed. I thought knowing the truth would make everything easier. I was wrong. Sometimes the truth does not bring comfort immediately. Sometimes it forces you to face the things you hoped were not real. After Alexander received the message saying someone knew we were searching, everything changed. The quiet investigation became a race to understand what had been hidden for so many years. But Alexander did not panic. That was something I admired about him. While everyone else reacted emotionally, he became more focused. He studied every detail, every connection, every possibility. "We need to understand what they want," he said. I looked at him. "You think this person is trying to stop us?" Alexander shook his head. "I think they are trying to control what we discover." His answer reminded me of something my father always said. Information could be more powerful than money because the person who controlled the story controlled how people saw the world. That was exactly what had happened to me. Someone created a story where I was the person to blame. But now we were searching for the person who wrote that story. Later that day, Alexander arranged a meeting with someone who had worked with his family for many years. His name was Victor Hayes. He was one of the most trusted advisors in Alexander's organization. When I saw him, I immediately understood why Alexander had difficulty accepting the possibility of betrayal. Victor was not someone who appeared suspicious. He was calm, respectful, and experienced. He spoke about loyalty as if it was the most important value in the world. But something about the conversation felt unusual. He knew details he should not have known. "You seem very interested in Emily's father," Alexander said carefully. Victor smiled. "Your father always respected good people. I believe we should respect his memory." The words sounded kind. But I noticed something Alexander noticed too. Victor avoided answering the question directly. After the meeting, we walked outside. "You noticed it," Alexander said. I looked at him. He changed the subject. Alexander nodded. "Exactly. I was beginning to understand his way of thinking. He did not search for obvious mistakes. He searched for small moments where people revealed more than they intended." "Do you trust him?" I asked. Alexander looked toward the city. "I trusted him before today." That answer carried more emotion than I expected. For the first time, I saw how much this investigation affected him personally. This was not only about business. It was about discovering that someone close to him might have been connected to years of hidden problems. "It must be difficult," I said. He looked at me. "What?" "Finding out someone you trusted might not be who you believed." He stayed silent for a moment. Then he said, "You know that feeling better than anyone." He was right. I thought about the people at the hotel who judged me without knowing the truth. I thought about how quickly they believed the worst version of me. But I also realized something. Not everyone had turned away. Alexander had chosen to look closer. That mattered. We continued investigating and found another important connection. A financial record showed that someone had moved information from my father's old company shortly before the accusation at the hotel. The person who accessed it used a private authorization code, a code belonging to someone inside Alexander's organization. "This is the missing link," Alexander said. I looked at the record. "So the person who framed me was trying to hide something about my father?" "Yes," he answered. "And they used your reputation as a shield." That sentence stayed with me. I had spent so much time wondering why someone chose me. Now I understood. They did not choose me because I was weak. They chose me because they believed nobody would question the accusation. But they made one mistake. They underestimated the person they blamed. That evening, Alexander and I returned to the hotel. The place looked the same as before, but I felt different. The whispers no longer controlled me. The opinions of strangers no longer defined me. I knew the truth was still incomplete, but I was no longer facing it alone. Before leaving, Alexander handed me the final piece of information they had found. It was a hidden note connected to my father's records. My hands trembled slightly as I opened it. Inside were only a few words. "The person you trust most may be the person you need to question." I looked at Alexander. He understood immediately. The message was not only about my past. It was about his present. Someone close to him had been hiding the truth for years. And now we both knew the same thing. The real betrayal was not coming from outside. It was coming from within. I thought the truth would feel like freedom. I was wrong. The truth can be heavy when it reveals that the people you trusted were never who you believed them to be. After finding the hidden note from my father, Alexander and I knew we were closer than ever to discovering who had been manipulating everything. But we also knew something else. The person responsible was not someone standing far away. They were someone who had been close enough to watch every decision, every mistake, and every moment of confusion. The next morning, Alexander asked me to meet him at his private office. The city outside the windows was already awake, but the room felt unusually quiet. He placed the note on the desk between us. "Your father knew someone close to him could not be trusted," he said. I looked at the words again, but he never named the person. Alexander shook his head, maybe because he did not have enough proof, or maybe because he was trying to protect someone. That possibility stayed in my mind. My father was not someone who acted without thinking. If he kept a secret, there was always a reason. "What happens now?" I asked. Alexander looked at the documents spread across the desk. "Now we find out who had the opportunity, the information, and the reason." We began reviewing every connection again. This time, we were not searching for a stranger. We were looking at the people closest to the situation. The names became smaller. The circle became narrower. And every detail mattered. Then we discovered something unexpected. The private authorization code used to access my father's old records had been active for years. It was not stolen. It was not copied. It belonged to someone who still had permission to use it. "That means the person had legitimate access," I said. Alexander nodded, which is why nobody questioned them. The realization was uncomfortable. The person behind everything had not hidden by staying away. They had hidden by becoming trusted. Later that afternoon, Alexander asked Victor Hayes to meet again. This time, the conversation was different. There were no accusations, no anger, only questions. Victor entered the room with the same calm expression as before. He looked at Alexander and smiled. "I assume you found something." Alexander remained quiet for a moment. "I found a connection." Victor looked at the documents. "A connection is not proof." "No," Alexander replied. "But it is a reason to ask questions." I watched Victor carefully. His expression did not change much, but something shifted. A small hesitation. A moment of uncertainty. It was brief, but Alexander noticed it. "You knew Emily's father better than you admitted," Alexander said. Victor looked at me. "Your father was respected." "That is not what I asked," Alexander replied. The room became silent. I realized then that power was not always about speaking louder. Sometimes it was about waiting until someone revealed the truth themselves. Victor finally admitted that he had worked with my father many years ago, but he insisted he had done nothing wrong. "Your father was searching for information that could damage powerful people," Victor said. He believed the truth mattered more than protecting relationships. I looked at Alexander. Those words sounded exactly like my father. "Then why hide this?" I asked. Victor looked away. "Because some truths create problems." His answer bothered me. Not because it was dramatic. Because it sounded like someone trying to justify silence. After the meeting, Alexander and I walked through the city. For the first time, I saw something different in him. He was not only searching for answers. He was dealing with disappointment. "You trusted him," I said. Alexander nodded. "For many years." "Does that make this harder?" He looked ahead. "Yes, but ignoring the truth would make it worse." I understood that, because I had spent days wanting people to believe me. Now I knew belief was not enough. The truth had to be faced, even when it was uncomfortable. That evening, we found the final piece of the puzzle. A hidden company record showed that someone had transferred important information shortly before the accusation at the hotel. The record was connected to Victor's access. But there was one detail that surprised us. The transfer was not made to benefit Victor. It was made to protect someone else. Alexander stared at the screen. "This changes everything." I looked at him. "Why?" He turned toward me. "Because Victor may not be the person who created this plan. He may have been protecting the person who did." The mystery became deeper than we expected. The person we thought was responsible might only be another piece of the story. And somewhere behind all of this was the real traitor. The person who had been hiding in plain sight from the beginning. I thought we had finally found the person behind the hidden information. I was wrong. The truth was never a straight path. It was a series of doors, and every door revealed another room filled with questions. After discovering that Victor Hayes might have been protecting someone else, Alexander and I realized we had been looking at the situation from the wrong direction. Victor had access. He had knowledge. But he also had something else. A reason to stay silent. And sometimes silence could hide just as much as a lie. The next morning, Alexander returned to the old company records with a different approach. Instead of searching for who had access, he searched for who benefited. That changed everything. The person responsible did not just want you blamed, Alexander explained. They needed you to become the focus so nobody would look at the real purpose behind this. I looked at the documents spread across the table. What was the purpose? He pointed to several transactions connected to the old company. Your father's research was not about money. It was about exposing decisions made by people who believed nobody would question them. I thought about my father. The way he always told me to do what was right even when it was difficult. The way he valued honesty over convenience. Suddenly, everything made sense. He was not hiding the truth because he was afraid. He was protecting it until someone was ready to understand it. Later that day, we returned to the Whitmore Grand Hotel. I walked through the same lobby where people had judged me only days before. But this time, I felt different. The whispers did not affect me the same way. I knew who I was. I knew what I had done. And I knew the truth was getting closer. Alexander noticed my expression. You are not as worried as before, he said. I looked at him. Because before, I was trying to convince people I was not the person they imagined. Now I know I do not have to. He nodded. That is a difficult lesson. You learned it too, I replied. He looked surprised. What do you mean? Everyone sees your power before they see you. For a moment, Alexander said nothing. Then he smiled slightly. You notice more than people realize. I smiled back. So do you. That was the strange thing about our situation. We came from completely different worlds, but we understood something about each other. We both knew what it felt like to be reduced to an image. He was seen as only a powerful man. I was seen as only someone people could overlook. But neither of those things told the whole story. That evening, Alexander received new information. A private account connected to the old company records had been active again. The activity came from someone who had access to both the hotel and the organization. Who has that level of access? I asked. Alexander looked at the list. His expression changed. Very few people. Victor. He shook his head. No. That surprised me. Then who? He looked at me. Someone you have met. The answer made me quiet. Someone from the hotel. Someone who had watched everything happen. We reviewed the employee records again. Then one name appeared repeatedly in places it should not have. Daniel Brooks. The same person who first appeared connected to the missing item. The same person who knew details about my father. But there was something we had missed before. Daniel was not acting alone. His access had been approved by someone else. Someone with greater authority. So Daniel was following instructions, I said. Alexander nodded. That is what it looks like. The discovery changed the entire investigation. The person who framed me was not simply trying to create a distraction. They were protecting a larger plan. A plan that involved old secrets, forgotten agreements, and people who believed they were untouchable. Before we left the office, Alexander showed me one final document. It was a message my father had written years ago, but never sent. The words were simple. The truth may arrive late, but it always finds the person willing to protect it. I read the message quietly. It felt like my father was speaking directly to me, not asking me to fight, not asking me to seek revenge, asking me to stay honest. As we walked outside, Alexander stopped for a moment. Emily. I looked at him. What? He paused before speaking. I owe you an apology. I was surprised. For what? For believing that protecting the truth was only my responsibility. I did not understand. What changed? He looked at me. You reminded me that justice means nothing if we forget the people affected by it. Those words stayed with me. The man everyone believed had unlimited power was learning something from the woman everyone ignored. And together, we were finally approaching the person who had created the entire situation. The real traitor was no longer hiding behind a story. Soon, they would have to face the truth they spent years trying to bury. I thought finding the real traitor would be the end of the story. I was wrong. It was the beginning of understanding why the truth had been hidden for so long. After discovering Daniel Brooks was only following someone else's instructions, Alexander and I knew we had to look beyond the obvious answers. The person behind everything had carefully built a chain of confusion, using other people as pieces in a plan that started years before I ever entered the Whitmore Grand Hotel. The next morning, Alexander gathered everyone connected to the investigation in one room. There was no anger, no unnecessary drama, only facts. That was the thing I admired most about him. He did not need to prove his power. He allowed the truth to speak for itself. Daniel admitted that he had been asked to redirect attention toward me. He said he believed he was protecting someone important, but he never expected the situation to become bigger than a simple accusation. "Who asked you to do it?" Alexander asked calmly. Daniel looked down before answering. "Victor." The room became quiet. I looked at Alexander. Victor Hayes, the man who had advised his family for years, was the person connected to the plan. But Alexander did not react the way I expected. He simply closed his eyes for a moment, as if accepting a truth he had already felt coming. "Why?" he asked. Daniel explained that Victor believed he was protecting the organization from a secret that could damage many people. He believed hiding the past was better than allowing the truth to change everything. But that was where he was wrong. Protecting people by hiding the truth only creates more pain. Later, Alexander and I met with Victor one final time. He did not deny his involvement. Instead, he explained his reasons. "Years ago, my father discovered information about decisions that affected many families and businesses. Victor believed revealing that information would create chaos. So he chose silence. But silence allowed the wrong people to keep control. Your father wanted the truth revealed," Victor said to me. "He believed people deserved to know what happened." I looked at him. "Then why did you let everyone believe I was responsible?" Victor lowered his eyes. "Because I thought people would ignore the truth if they were focused on blaming someone else." His answer hurt because it revealed something important. He did not see me as a person. He saw me as a distraction. The same mistake so many people had made before. They saw my appearance. They saw my position. They saw what they wanted to see. But they never looked deeper. Alexander stepped forward and spoke quietly. "That is the problem with underestimating someone. Eventually, they become the person who reveals what you wanted hidden." Those words stayed with me, because they were true. I had spent years wondering why people judged me so quickly. Now I understood that their opinions were never the measure of my worth. The truth was, after everything was resolved, my name was cleared. The people who once questioned me finally understood what had happened. But the biggest change was not how they saw me. It was how I saw myself. I no longer needed approval from people who refused to understand me. Alexander also changed. The man who once believed control was the only way to protect people learned that trust mattered more. Before I left the hotel one evening, he stopped beside me. "You know, when this started, I thought I was the one searching for the truth." I smiled. "And now?" He looked toward the city lights. "Now I think the truth was teaching both of us something." I knew then that our lives had changed because of one moment when everyone else chose the easiest explanation. They saw a woman they could blame. Alexander saw a person worth believing. And sometimes, the person everyone overlooks is the one who changes everything.